just go out and do it with as minimum investment, both monetary and time as possible. I think a lot of new entrepreneurs that I see are kind of infatuated with starting the next Facebook. And in order to do that, what they do is they build out, this huge idea with all these different layers that they don't know anything about actually doing, but it all sounds great to them. So they pitch that to people, and people maybe like it, maybe don't, but tell them it's cool. And then they go out and try and raise money and put together business presentations. And I think being prepared can help. And I think raising money can help. But I'm a huge advocate in just going out there and doing.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of the Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7- and 8-figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where we help startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. If you ever need help with yours, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always happy to help. Now, today we have another great guest on the podcast, Aaron Kozinets, and hopefully I said the name close to being right. And just as a quick intro on that, Aaron growing up in high school, always had little businesses that he would run to make money, side hustles and whatnot, wanted to be an entrepreneur. At college, did some internships or did several internships at different startups to kind of figure out what he wanted to do and what he was good at. Graduated in business and public relations from University of Southern California. Wanted to work at a startup to connect influencers with fans. Found it was time consuming to find the influencers, and so decided to start his own business to help startups find influencers, and he'll get into a bit more of that after he learned the ins and outs of the industry. And then he graduated, committed to that full time, and has been doing it ever since. So with that much as a brief introduction, welcome on the podcast, Aaron.
Thanks so much. And that was a good job on the introduction there.
All right, I do my best. So with that, I gave kind of the brief 30-second version of the much longer journey. And so why don't you take us a bit back in time, kind of into high school, doing the odds and ends, doing the side hustles to make money, and how your journey started there?
Yeah, I think one of the main things that made me really love entrepreneurship was in high school. A buddy of mine, we would put on these little events where we would book a venue, we would charge people to come to the venue, and then we would have to pay the venue, we would have to pay for a DJ, but then we got to keep all the rest of the cash. And I just loved the thrill of, having all that risk and then having to go out there and sell. And if you made a lot of money, I think, I once profited like 3,000 in a couple weeks event into 16-year-old. That's a ton of money. So I was pretty set then that, I probably didn't want to do events, but being an entrepreneur was really fun. I didn't want to, sit at a desk and listen to someone else tell me what to do. No matter, I knew that, in order to be happy, I think I had to kind of be my own boss and start my own business.
No, and I think that, I think that's first of all, it's cool. I always think it's amicable for people that are in high school to figure out side hustles, ways to make money, ways to, rather than just going to parents say, hey, I need the new clothes, or I want to go get a car or whatever. And, they pay for it, or they tell you no or whatnot, say, hey, I'm going to figure out how to make money and how to do that. And I think that you learn a lot of good lessons and set you up well in life. So now as you're wrapping up high school, you're deciding to go off to school, how did that work? Where did school start for you? I think you mentioned a lot of startups. You worked for different startups or interned during school. You're also getting a degree. So tell us a little bit about how that trend part of your journey went out or worked out.
Yeah, actually, when I was 18, so I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And my dad came to me and he said, look, you want to be an entrepreneur? You should take the money that instead of going to college, and you should go start your own business right now. And I looked at him and I was like, Dad, look, I'd love to, but I don't know if I'm ready yet. I don't know what to do. I don't know the first thing about business. And, I want to enjoy college. So he's like, well, it's your choice. But that's what I would do if I were you. And I think I made the right choice going to college because I don't know that I would have been ready. I didn't have the network and I wanted to, enjoy college still. But I went in with the mindset of, I want to come out of this with a business. So I knew the whole time. I want, college to me would be a failure if I was taking a normal job after college. So at first, what I was doing is interning at all these startups and really trying to figure out, one, what's a good idea that what I want to do. Two, what kind of boss do I want to be? Who are people that I respect and that are good bosses here, and who are people that I don't respect, and why don't I respect them, and how can I not be like that when I start my own company? And then really just tried to get as much experience as possible so that I can know what I like, know what I don't like, know that there's going to be roles that I have to hire for and stuff that I will actually be able to do myself. So I did a pretty good job of interning at a number of really interesting startups. One of which was a company called TikTok, which connected influencers and fans. So you could actually pay an influencer on their platform and ask them any question about anything. And
I'm
my
just out of curiosity because it is the same name. There's a huge platform called TikTok. Was it that TikTok or was it a different
No, it was called
one?
TIP.
Oh,
Talk.
TikTok. I
So
heard TikTok. I'm like, but I
no,
didn't feel like it was the same thing. So I'm like, so I thought I'd clarify. So
I'm
appreciate the clarification.
I'm glad you clarified that because there probably would have been a lot of confusion there. This was before TikTok was even a thing. And TikTok, the app that I work for, no longer exists. But while I was there, I realized, okay, my job's to find all these influencers. Well, it's really hard to do in bulk. I was going through Instagram, I was going through YouTube, just doing searches, and it's fine if you want to create a list of 10, 20, but when you're trying to reach out to 100 a day, it's not easy. And there was software out there that we looked into, and a lot of it was tens of thousands just to access the software, and just mainly focused on the bigger influencers, which at the time the app really couldn't afford to get them on. They wanted a lot of kind of micro influencers. So I was like, well, there's got to be a better way, and there's most of the industry is really just set up for these big companies with big budgets. So the next summer, while a lot of my friends were out there looking for internships, I was like, well, why don't I come up with an MVP and start something where can help companies of all sizes really work with influencers in a way that makes sense to them. And that's what I did. I started off really small, and I didn't come up with a huge business presentation. I didn't try and raise money beforehand. I just went out there and started selling and started figuring out what people were looking for and how I could do that effectively.
No, and I think that first of all, I think just backing up slightly that going to college saying, hey, I know I'm going to be an entrepreneur. If I don't come out of this, if I don't come out with doing my own business, that was a waste of money, so to speak. So let's make sure that I do a whole bunch of internships and work for startups and figure out what works. I think that certainly is that's a great way to approach college. As a way to not just simply go and get a degree, but also you leverage it as a way that, hey, I'm coming out of here and I know what I'm going to do, and I've already got experience and start doing it. So you worked with that company, that startup for a period of time, TikTok as opposed to TikTok, and you worked with them, and you were get that. Hey, this is difficult. It's very time consuming. It's not very efficient. There's got to be and that's oftentimes where you kind of get your startup. Got to be a better way, and I think I can do it better, and I can figure it out. So after you kind of learn the ins and the outs of the industry, how did that transition to wanting to using it as a way to start your own business or do your own thing? How did you kind of make that decision? How did you come to that realization? How did you get started?
Yeah, basically, I just started doing some more research on my own. So I was going through and looking up different influencer search engines that were out there. And I found one that I thought looked interesting and could help me to find influencers. So what I did was I purchased them. I think it was around $600 per month. So I purchased it for 1 month. I think I probably at the time had about $1,000 in my bank account. So it was a substantial investment for me at that time, and really just went in and would do some searches. So like fashion influencers, and would download from them and categorize each of the influencers as I saw fit. So for that whole month, whenever I had a free minute, I was just downloading influencers and kind of creating my own little influencer database. So at the end of that month, I had maybe it was around 30 or 40 influencer database that was categorized. And then I went to go and start selling. And the first thing I did was I started freelancing. So I went on Fiverr, I went on Upwork, and I would just try and get clients right away. I probably got my first client within a week for $10, where I just made them a small little list of influencers. Eventually, over that summer, I was 100, 200. I worked my way up maybe to about $500. So still really small campaigns, but it was great. I couldn't do what the packages that I'm able to sell now without getting that experience. And it was really good because I was able to work with, 100 companies maybe, all with different size package, but really to understand the nuances of each campaign. What works? What's effective? What are they looking for? What do I say to them to convince them to purchase? How do I convince the influencers to work just for free product? How do I do this without a budget? So doing it at a really small level, while it can be frustrating, especially if you're not a college student and you have bills to pay, it's probably not always possible, but was really helpful for learning the ins and outs of the industry and doing so without a budget to spend.
No, I think that that's awesome. Taking that, bootstrapping it, getting clients, getting revenue, and without a big budget, kind of figuring out how to make it work is definitely, I think, a great way to go. So now, as far as the timing, when you started to do kind of your own business and get that going, were you still in college? Did you graduated? What was the kind? I'm just curious because you said your goal of going into college is, hey, if I don't come out of here either having my own startup or knowing what I'm going to do, college will be a failure. So how did that work out timing wise? Were you a success? Did you come out of college with your own startup, or were you a failure, but you recovered from your failure?
I'm happy to say that I was a success. So I started the company, I think, when I had about a year and a half left of college. So for that next year and a half, I never took on any more jobs. I was a full-time student who also ran this company. And it was really great because the university saw that, I was an entrepreneur and they wanted to help me. So a lot of my professors would talk to me about my business and make introductions. And I really met a lot of people that have been really helpful to this day, just because I had that business and because I was a little different and was grinding on the business. But for that year and a half, I took on a ton of projects. I learned a lot and I didn't make a whole ton of money, but it set me up for right when I graduated to have a plan in place, have a network in place, and have the knowledge in place to actually go out there and be able to succeed. So I was a student entrepreneur for a year and a half. And then immediately graduating, I said, okay, this is my full-time job. I'm going to charge more. I'm going to get more clients and I'm going to make this work.
I think that's awesome. So you one checkbox success. That's awesome that you were able to come out of school and be able to make or have that startup that you're already working on. Now, as you're coming out of school and you make that, I assume it became your full time endeavor. You were continuing to grow it to make more money and to build it into a business. How has it gone since then? Has it been a hockey stick straight to the top and you made millions of dollars? Has it been one where it's been ups and downs, still figuring it out, bringing on other employees, staying on solo? Kind of how has that gone for you since graduation?
Yeah. So since graduation, I was committed. I said, I got to make this work. And I was grinding nonstop on it. And the pandemic actually helped. The whole world shut down. Everyone needed to go online, find new ways to reach people. And, this was my life I'd wake up in the morning, work on Influence Hunter, go to bed, still be working on Influence Hunter. Uh, at around May, I think I had about 5 or 6 full-time month recurring clients, which was at a point where I was able to, sustain myself and sustain my business, pay myself, which was great. But I had no more time to take on any more clients. I was basically at capacity. And a close friend of mine came up to me and he said, I love what you're doing. It's super interesting. I just got a full-time sales offer for 6 figures, but they've delayed it because of the pandemic, and I don't start for another 3 months. So I've got literally nothing to do. Do you need any help with your business? I'd love to help you for free, and we can figure it out later if it works. And
And
I was,
you told them no, right? You're like, oh, I would never want free work for somebody that will help me out. That would be a terrible idea.
yeah, I wish. No, I badly needed help at that point. It was the
I
perfect timing. And he's a really smart guy, someone I'd always wanted to work with, but the stars kind of aligned there. And I said, absolutely. Like, please, I have so much that I'm trying to do. So he came in and he basically immediately started working full time for me, working the same crazy hours as I was. Within a few weeks, we both realized that this was working out. And he said, look, I want to work for you. Can we come to something that made sense? And I brought him on as a business partner, and he turned down that six-figure sales job and committed to building Influence Hunter with me. Year later, we're still together, and we have about 10 full-time people now. So he did an amazing job. One of the first things we did was we hired a full-time account manager, so someone in charge of overseeing all of the actual campaigns, who after a couple of months quit her full-time job and allowed me to not actually be running all the day-to-day within the campaigns, which I couldn't have grown my company to around 30 active clients the way we are now, while there was no way. I was tapped out at about 5 or 6.
No, I think that it sounds like it was a continuing to grow up, bringing people on. That was a great opportunity both for him and for you, and it worked out well that he just decided to stay on with you, which is that's awesome. And it sounds like it's continuing to be a success. And it was interesting when you hit the pandemic, and I think any change in the marketplace, it always causes nervousness, but also presents a lot of times an opportunity that you can now say, okay, how can we leverage this to make our business even more successful? Because anytime that there's a change in the marketplace, people either will try and wait it out, they'll start to lose sales, or they'll adapt and grow. So it's awesome that you guys took that as a way to continue to grow the business. So, well, that brings us up a bit to what your journey is at and where you're at today, and a little bit of where you guys are headed. And so with that, we'll jump to the two questions I always ask at the end of each podcast. The first question I always ask is, along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made, and what did you learn from it?
The worst decision I ever made was probably not wanting to hire at first. So I worked on this business for a long time, and I was so scared that people wouldn't be able to do this as well as I could. And I think that was kind of naive and overconfident of me to think that I'm so smart. I'm the only one who can do this, because I found that there are a lot of really capable people out there who are able to do this. So that, and also overselling. I think when you're young, and you're especially not just young in age, but maybe young just starting a business, it's really easy to overpromise. So you really want this client. You think, okay, I can get them so many sales through influencers. I can do an amazing job. Let me show my best case study and pitch that to them as like that's what's going to happen to them. And it works differently for every single business. So really understanding what you're actually capable of and the deliverables that you can promise, such as like amount of influencers worked with, amount of content generated, as opposed to just like bottom line revenue, promising that in sales. So those were probably two of the biggest business mistakes I made. Was one, not giving other people enough responsibility to start, being scared to give other people roles that I thought I could handle. And then two, over promising clients, because it can be an effective sales tactic. But, if you don't deliver, you run into a whole other bunch of problems. Now, if anything, I'm too honest with what will happen. I'll let them know, because I've reached the point where I would rather them not be upset 2 months into a 6-month contract. I'd rather not have them as a client than have them upset.
No, and I agree with you on all fronts. I mean, one is it's always hard as an entrepreneur, especially when you start it up. It's your baby, it's your own thing, and you want it to, you want a success. You're invested in to, as you bring people on, you still want to say, well, I can do this better, I can do it quicker. It's going to take me as long to train them as just doing it myself. And for all those reasons, you just hold on to things so tightly that you're almost can sometimes hinder the growth of the business, because you're not allowing others to do the things that you aren't adding as much value, or that can be done by other people, such that you can focus your time and attention on the things that you really add value and others can't do nearly as well. But I think it's one where everybody almost has to learn that lesson and go through that experience, because it's one where until you've gone through it, you never fully understand it. And then the second one, I agree with you as well. It's always easy, short-term gain. Sometimes if you over deliver or over promise, then and you under deliver, sometimes it'll initially come out of the client because you're over promising and think they'll create all this value. And yet now as you start to under deliver, they're not going to be long-term clients. So I agree with you. I think it can be short-term successful sales tactic, but harmful long-term to the business. So I think to your point, it's always better to honestly either under promise or just honestly promise this is what we can do. This is realistically what we're able to do and the time frames and the budgets and whatnot, and then let them know so they can make that informed decision. So I think those are great mistakes that are easy to learn or make, but also great ones to learn from. So now we jump to the second question. And before we get to the second question, just as a reminder, we also have the bonus question after this episode where we'll talk a little bit about intellectual property. So if you're interested in that, make sure to stay tuned and after the end of the episode. But before we jump to the bonus question, wrapping up the second question, which is we're talking to someone that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what'd be the one piece of advice you'd give them?
Just go out and do it with as minimum investment, both monetary and time as possible. I think a lot of new entrepreneurs that I see are kind of infatuated with starting the next Facebook. And in order to do that, what they do is they build out, this huge idea with all these different layers that they don't know anything about actually doing, but it all sounds great to them. So they pitch that to people, and people maybe like it, maybe don't, but tell them it's cool. And then they go out and try and raise money and put together business presentations. And I think being prepared can help. And I think raising money can help. But I'm a huge advocate in just going out there and doing. My business was profitable from day one because it had to be. I didn't have any money to spend. I spent all my time doing two things. One, selling the business, and two, figuring out how to do my service more effectively. Now, I'm in a service business, so it's a little different than some other sectors per se, but I think that was the best use of my time. It was better use of my time than it would be to be making presentations and pitch decks and pitching to people. I was selling to actual customers, and I was performing the service that I was selling, and all my time was spent trying to find a better way to do those two things. And I think, if you're doing your first startup, I think you should try and focus on spending as much of your time doing those two things.
No, and I agree. And I think even if it's a product, a lot of times, you can get now I hate the word minimally viable product just because it always makes it sound like I'm going to put out the crappiest product as quick as I can, and it shouldn't be a crappy product. But I think you can find ways of whether it's a service and or product-based business. Oftentimes you kind of buy into, well, I have to have huge investors and lots of money and everything else. And there's some exceptions where that's true, but most of the time, if you look at it, work hard, think about it, and strategize, you can oftentimes figure out a much more minimalistic way to get started and start to be profitable such that you can grow into that end vision as opposed to just trying to go 0 to 60 all at once. So I think that's a great piece of advice. Well, as we wrap up and before the bonus question, if people want to reach out to you, they want to be a client, a customer, they want to be connected to influencers, they are an influencer and they want to have you represent them or utilize your services. They want to be an investor, they want to be an employee, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above. What's the best way to reach out, find out more, and connect up with you?
I would say LinkedIn. So you can reach out to me, Aaron Kozinets, Kozinets. If you add me on LinkedIn, I'll drop me a note. I'll probably connect back, or you can reach out to me at info@influencehunter.com, and I would respond to you there.
Awesome. I definitely encourage everybody to reach out. I think it's a great opportunity, great platform, and definitely worth checking out and supporting. So with that, thank you again for coming on the podcast. It's been it's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you listeners out there, if you have your own journey to tell and you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, feel free to go to inventiveguest.com, apply to be on the show. Two more things as a listener. One, make sure to click subscribe in your podcast player so you know when all of our awesome episodes come out. And two, leave us a review so other people can find out about all the awesome episodes. And last but not least, if you ever need help with patents, trademarks, or anything else for your business, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat. Now, with that, now we wrap up the normal part of the episode, I always love the bonus questions because it's kind of fun. We get to switch gears a bit. You get to take over the hot seat and ask me a question, and then I get to take over and answer. And so, with that, I'll turn it over to you as to what is your top intellectual property question?
Yeah, well, I hope you don't mind me asking this and you're able to answer it because I don't know if you will, but I'm curious. What is your least expensive patent you've ever worked on? And what is your most expensive patent you've ever worked on? And if you're not able to tell me the dollar amount, maybe can you at least tell me what they were?
Sure. Yeah, I'll take it from a total investment, start to finish. In other words, you can, prepare and file is one thing versus getting it all the way through to get a issued patent. So least expensive is $0. I guess not $0. I was gonna say $0 would be a bit facetious because I've done several of my own patents. So I love startups. I've done several of my own startups. The first that patent I actually wrote all the way through was for the business I started in MBA school, which is now evolved into a 9-figure business. But that was the first business I ever, or first patent I ever. Now I've done other work. I got experience, worked for law firms, but I wrote that one all the way through was that one. So that one, other than the cost, I think it was $200 or $300 for the filing fee to do it. I filed my own patent, did it myself. Now I wouldn't recommend that for most people because I had experience. I was an attorney. I knew what I was doing, and so it's not the same thing as doing it yourself, and that's a whole different discussion. That would probably be the least expensive. The one, probably the most expensive, if I were to look at, and that was not a question I'd thought of before. You probably, if I were to get into some of them, if they're very niche, very specific, and it's a very crowded field, a lot of people have already invented in there, and you're doing a very narrow difference or a change or modification, it could take longer. There's probably been patents that I've worked on that have reached the whole process 20 to 25,000. So that's the outside the norm. They usually don't take that much to get through, but some of them we fought a lot longer. We did a lot, or it took a lot longer, and it was good motivations. It was worthwhile for the client for those ones. So you can range anywhere from $200 or $300 that when I originally filed my own patent while I was still finishing up MBA school and law school for my startup, all the way to businesses that are willing to fight the long fight and fight a good fight because there's motivation. So that gives you a bit of an idea of kind of the range of the different patents I worked on. So fun question, one I hadn't actually thought of. So kudos to you for asking a good question. So with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up the podcast. Thank you again, Aaron, for coming on. It's been it's been a pleasure, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Same to you. It was awesome being on, and I appreciate you having me.